Hey, I am Mustafa Sharif. Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. I'm looking forward this episode. We're gonna talk about gender equal city and also about Me Too movement. I have the pleasure to welcome Caroline to Urbanistica podcast. Hey and welcome, Caroline.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you so much, by the way, for giving your time to record this episode.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
How's it going with everything now with the Corona situation?
Yeah, it's what to say. I mean, here in Sweden, it's pretty chill, but still, it's weird. It's a weird time working from home every day, not seeing your friends so often, and everything. So, but yeah, it's I manage.
Yes. Did it affect your, let's say, movement in the city?
Yeah, of course. I'm mostly home or like going for walks close to my home or bike rides. But I never, I'm not in the central of the city anymore if I don't have to for some reason. And yeah, I definitely not move around in the same way.
Super interesting time, as we mentioned in the beginning. Well, Caroline, how would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what are you passionate about?
So usually when I introduce myself, I start with saying that I'm a former sailor. I worked as a sailing chef for 9 years before getting a life crisis when I was 23. So then I changed completely, moved to Stockholm, and started to study computer science and business at the university. Since then, I've been working with tech and entrepreneurship in many different ways. And I'm passionate about creating a better world.
Well, and also you have a really cool podcast together with Sandra.
Yes, exactly. I run a podcast about the tech and construction industry, which is quite a weird combination. But yeah, I work in tech and I'm really passionate about the tech industry because I really think it's the future. And Sandra, that I do the podcast with, she's from the construction industry and she thinks the same thing about construction. So we just want to show the great and cool and amazing sides with these industries. And yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. And in the beginning, I was thinking like, okay, tech and construction,
Yeah.
how are they gonna match it? But then yeah, you nail it. So really well done.
Thank you.
Caroline, I will start with the first question actually. Are you a feminist? And how
Uh,
how how do you define a feminist?
Yeah, so yes, I'm a feminist, and I define feminism as like wanting to have an equal world where men and women and or whatever you define yourself as are equal. That's feminism for me, and that's why I'm a feminist.
Mm. And should feminism be the normal way of thinking or
Yeah, of course, because I mean, yes, it's a. I always had a problem with understanding why you think it would be okay to treat someone differently depending on their gender or the color of their skin or their ability to move or whatever. Like, yeah, it's of course everybody should be treated equally.
yeah, and unfortunately we have this like the feminist mindset and the normal mindset, which is as you mentioned shouldn't be too separate. It should be obvious that you shouldn't treat someone just because she has different gender or background.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the problem is that people who don't like feminism or whatever to call it are people who I would say in general are people who believe that feminism is about that women should in some way have it better than men or something, which is like not what feminism is about. So yeah, I think everybody should be a feminist.
Yes. And you started this huge great movement, Me Too. And I would love to have this story as an introduction to the rest of the episode when we come to the how do we create a gender equal city. So would you mind to share with us the Me Too? What was the background? How did everything started?
Yeah, so I didn't start the entire movement. Yes.
Good to mention, yes.
I took the initiative to Me Too demonstrations that took place in 14 cities in Sweden. And The reason that happened was because when Me Too arrived as a phenomenon in October 2017, me, as so many other women, I wrote the Me Too Facebook post on Facebook. And when I did that, two men started to commenting in a very demeaning way. And not really towards me, but towards women in general and towards Me Too. And they said that we should, well, stop complaining, basically. And that got me quite angry. So both me and many other of my Facebook friends started to argue with these two men, and we tried to explain to them that Me Too isn't just a way for women to spam men, it's a way for us to stand up for our rights and demand equality. But then I saw other men who did the same thing on other women's Facebook posts, and then I just felt that I had enough and that I need to do something. And I didn't really know what at the time. But I started a Facebook event and I wrote, we need to do something. I don't know what, but I just want to meet other people who feel the same frustration over seeing all these horrible confessions. I did that on a Tuesday evening, and Wednesday morning it had all just exploded into this big crazy thing. And then during 5 days, me and some other people together just put it all together and managed to start this demonstration in 14 different cities, which looking back, feels incredible to have been part of.
Yeah. And are you still keep organizing it, or this just something happened in the past and not gonna happen?
Yeah, so the demonstration only happened once. There has been talk about doing it again, like on the same date or something every year to keep it going. But that hasn't, to be honest, happened the last 2 years, so 2018 and 2019. Maybe 2020 is the year. But what we did afterwards was that we started up an organization called Me Too Sweden um, for like to continue the work. I didn't continue to work in that organization, but there are other people who are still working in it and keeping it alive. So they are doing a lot of great work in regards to Me Too.
Yes. And what made you to take this decision that okay, I had enough?
Yeah, but it was this that I saw that so many men was commenting in a way that they just thought like a lot of women were putting their heart out there. Like it's a hard thing to do to write like a post and confess that you have been a victim of sexual harassment or sexual violence or whatever. I mean, that's a big thing to do. And for me, it was a big thing to do. And I know that for a lot of other women who did wrote those posts, it was a big thing to do. And then to see men like just saying that, like laughing at my friends, my coworkers, my family members who have put their heart out there, see them laughing at them and saying to them that this is silly, you should stop doing this, you are just making too big thing out of this. That just made me really angry, and it made me realize that there are so many people out there who don't understand how serious these problems are. And yeah, anger just made me feel that I have to act in some way.
Yeah. And I think it was completely the right act to talk about it and stop keep silent about such important
Yeah,
topic.
I mean, the problem is, or still is, but maybe even more before Me Too, that I think a lot of, especially women, felt very alone because you didn't really like. Obviously, you knew that other women also uh, had been victim of this type of treatment and crimes. But I think that in some way you still felt alone. You still felt that this has only happened to me, or maybe it happened to others. But those women acted upon it. If someone, for example, are sexually harassing you and you don't say anything back, like you just take it, I think that is some type of shame in that as well. Do you understand what I mean? That you are
Yes,
ashamed that,
exactly. Yeah.
I should have been so strong and I should have said no and whatever, and you didn't do that. And then you feel some type of shame and you feel like, oh, I'm like, I did something bad, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
me who did it. So I think that just see that, okay, it happens to all women, no matter like where in the society you are, where in the world you are. It was a really important statement in itself.
Yeah. And do you think, or did you see that Me Too change the different stories? What did you notice after the organizing the Me Too here in Sweden?
I mean, here in Sweden, we are pretty like far. We have come pretty far in these questions already, which I think was an important part in that Me Too became so big here. Me Too became bigger in Sweden than anywhere else in the world. If you look on the number of Google search on Me Too, it was actually, I think, 3 or 5 times as high in Sweden as in the Netherlands. And the Netherlands was the country in the world with the next most amount of Google search on hashtag Me Too around that time. So it became really, really big in Sweden. So what I saw, I mean, I saw that the climate of talking about this changed a lot. Before, I mean, you couldn't, like, if you were talking about equality or you were talking about sexual harassment or sexual violence, people were looking at you and like, oh, okay, there's a crazy feminist, basically. But after Me Too, it was okay to talk about these issues almost everywhere. I could talk about it on the coffee break at work with my coworkers. I could talk about it at the party with my friends. I mean, all of a sudden, it was more okay to discuss these things. And it was also like you couldn't really act as if it didn't happen anymore. Before, a lot of, and now I'm generalizing, but a lot of men mostly, not only men, but a lot of men, and not all men, of course, like talked, like said that, oh, you're just overreacting, this isn't really a big issue, it doesn't really happen. But after Me Too, you couldn't really say that anymore, because you saw that it is actually a big problem. It does happen to a lot of women. Those, I guess, was the major change in it. And of course, here in Sweden, we actually got a law after Me Too that they actually announced on the demonstration that we arranged. We got a law that's called Samtyckeslagen, which shortly means that before that law, you could say, like, if you had been raped, the person who raped you could say that, oh, but she didn't say no, so I didn't know that she didn't want to have sex with me. But this law basically says that if someone doesn't say yes, you can't, like, then, I mean, you can't say, like, you have to say yes. You have to show, like, you have to just say, oh, the person didn't say no, isn't like working anymore, basically, because of this law.
Yes, yes. So again, I believe it was the right action, and hopefully we need more action to reduce this amount of negative action towards all the females. And also believe urban planning, architecture, and the city design is part of this game as well. And in many situations, things happen because it was a bad urban design. So we start. I would like to to see how do you define a gender equal city?
I mean, it's a city that is built for everyone. And one thing that comes to mind, and that's not maybe about building a city, more actually from a construction point of view. So I actually talked about with Sandra about this, that in buildings, the temperature in a building is usually a little bit too cold for females, because it's adapted for the male body, because the male body is a little bit hotter in the temperature than the female body. So the temperature mostly in the most buildings are a little bit too cold for a woman. And I tried to think about like something similar like in the city, but I mean, sometimes, for example, there can be like really high steps, which I'm not super short, but I'm quite small. So sometimes I feel that things are built for bigger people, like taller people with taller legs, or that are taller in general. So I guess, yeah, sometimes you have to think about like the general person. You can't only see that as the height of a general man. It also has to be seen as the height of a general woman, for
Exactly,
example.
because the standard that the urban planner, architects, and landscape architects looking at, when we have the body of the majority of these standards based on a white man body, like, which is really what you see everywhere in the city. And as you mentioned, a gender equal city is basically a city for everyone. So I would like to start to narrow it down to a detail level. So let's say if you go to a public space, what elements that makes you feel welcome and safe in that place?
Yeah, when it comes to feeling welcome, I guess it's a lot about, the colors and the shapes and everything, and that, you can feel some type of, warmth in the place you are. But when it comes to feeling safe, I guess one problem that I realized after talking to a lot of my male friends about it, is that a man is never afraid walking home when it's dark.
True.
And for me, like, I always been that, like, ever since I was really small, I always been, if I'm walking alone outside, and I walk a lot, I always walk, and even if I'm out late at the party or at a friend's house, I usually walk home. I don't take the bus or anything. And even so, I'm always scared. I always maybe walk with my keys in my hand like this, or acting as if I'm listening to music, but I don't really do it because I want to, be sure that I can hear everything that's happening around me. And if someone is walking behind me and I can feel that person is walking faster, I get scared. And so that's something that I really feel is, for me to be safe. Um, it's hard when it's dark, but that it's a lot of both lightning, but also when it comes to, and this is of course a very difficult subject, but like, what do you call it, like video surveillance, to have like in public places. And of course, I work with security, so obviously, there's a lot of problem with surveillance and feeling as if the government is watching you all the time. But there is also a lot of good things with having surveillance, and to be sure that if something happens to me, there is a way to see that, for someone to maybe come and help me, or if something bad happens, to afterward have a way to prove that it actually happened. Um, um, Another thing could be to lighten up places more, as for example to have more lighting around bus stations and areas where people walk a lot. There's a lot of parks and a lot of places where it's not so much people, especially during night. How can you make those places feel safer? Maybe not only with light. Is there other ways to make sure that you feel safe? I actually saw this really interesting. I was at an event where they talked about. It was mostly about surveillance, actually, but they also talked about new bus. Where you wait for the bus.
Bus stops.
Yes, exactly, like this little thing that you can stand in, and they had this big screen on it. So if you felt like, if you were standing there and felt scared for some reason, you could like press on the big screen, and they were actually like calling to a place where people were, so you could talk to someone while you were waiting for the bus on the big screen. I don't know if they will implement it anywhere, but it was a
Wow.
nice thought to have like easy access to talk to someone if you're in an emergency, or if you just feel scared.
Exactly. This is very cool implementation actually to make you feel safer and more social.
Yeah, and I think one thing that happened after Me Too was that a lot of entrepreneurs reached out to me because they had different ideas around how can we help women to feel safer. And a lot of them had ideas about different apps, and a lot of them had to do with like, how can we like yeah, if we are 100 people who has the same app, and you're walking alone and you open the app and you can see where all the other people who has the app are, like little helpers in some way, I don't know, but to feel that, okay, if something happens to me now when I'm walking on this lonely in this empty dark area, there are people around that could like help me. So I mean, that's also a way, like how can you show, like, because sometimes when you're walking somewhere you feel alone even though there are a lot of people around you. It's like, how can you make sure to like not feel that loneliness, I guess, because that's
Y-
almost usually what's scary.
Yeah, with the help of the application.
Yeah, or something else, I don't know.
Yes. So, well, let's take the question from the other way around. If you go to a public space or a park, what is the elements that you hate, make you hate this park or this public space?
um
Like
yeah, I mean,
you go inside and you say, okay, I don't want to be here because of this.
yeah, if it's if I'm just shortly staying at this thing of like being scared, I mean, the thing that I really hate is if you go to a park or a public space, and because you can mostly those type of places, they are lighten up, but they are lighten up in a way so they feel even more scary. You know, the light is pretty,
Yes,
yeah, you know
spotlight.
what I
Yeah.
mean. Yeah, exactly, like spotlight. So it's like one place, okay, here you can see, but
Yes.
you can't see anything around, so it makes it feels even more like scary. So that's something like if I going through a park or someplace and I see that, like, oh no, okay, now I just have to run. uh, so yeah, and otherwise, I mean, so one thing that I really like, now I'm changing your question a bit, but one thing that I really appreciate, and this has nothing to do, I guess, with genders, but more what I really enjoy, or versus what I don't enjoy when I'm in a city is, you know, boring buildings. Like nowadays, I really see that when they're building like new parts of a city, they thinking more of it in a way that they want like not all the buildings to look exactly the same. I
Yes.
mean, go to area and like all the houses are looking exactly the same, and it's so, that is something that, like, I don't hate it, but it looks really boring.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you.
yeah, so just like see creativity and feel that, you know, it's everything is different. There's actually, I don't know if you've been to Linköping anytime, like to the city Linköping.
Actually, no, tell me the story.
Yeah, so they have a really great architecture where they have this entire area where they have different artists and different architects and everything, and they just mixed it. So it's a completely new part of the town, but it looks like it doesn't look like everything's built together. It's just, you know, a big mix of different people from different cultures and genders and everything. Like they really like try, like put an effort into making sure that everybody who's contributing to this is different type of people. So they really created a new part of the city, which is just, yeah, a big mix of everything, but it's all new.
Yeah.
uh,
So
that's
if
really
I
cool.
understand you correctly, the lighting is one thing, and also seeing a creative and different
Yeah,
shapes of buildings makes you also feel comfortable and more welcome to this area than having just a copy pasted shapes of buildings,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And also, I mean that it in like, because I think that you can really, like, you can see if someone, like if you're in an area of a town and you can see that the person who built this or the person who draw this has really, you know, it's not just yet another middle-aged white male. I mean, where you can see that they try to bring in different culture and different perspectives, and you can really feel. I mean, you can really feel that atmosphere. That's really amazing.
Yes, exactly. You can see the different touch, and it's not coming from the
Yeah,
same person or the same
exactly.
company.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's also because of city trying to keep, don't want to get it so much chaotic, and they try to regulate everything, but too much regulation equal boring city,
yeah.
unfortunately. So what are the other elements that makes you hate a place in the city?
Well, I guess when it's too messy, you know, with traffic and everything, like I usually walk or bike everywhere, and like for example, here in the like central of Stockholm, it's just a big mess because it's cars everywhere and people are walking everywhere and people are biking everywhere at the same time, and it's just chaos. And I like when I'm biking outside of the city, I always I'm happy and feeling energized. And whenever I'm biking like in the city, I'm just angry and frustrated. So and that's not like the same everywhere, but I think Stockholm is a particularly bad city when it comes to that. It's just a big mess.
Yeah. So
So
e- even if you bike on the separate bike lines, you feel the same stress because of the cars and the
yeah,
noise
yeah, yeah.
pollution.
Sometimes the bike lines goes in the middle of the road, so you have cars on both sides and everything. So I mean, there's a lot of other cities which are great in that sense of building like. I mean, it could still be like messy, but not chaotic, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Yes, I
yeah,
get your point. Yes. And how is it when you take the metro? Do you also feel the same? You were telling that if you walk home alone during the night, you always pay extra attention.
yeah, it's the
How
same
how
way.
how is it?
It's the same way. I mean, especially like if it's really late and you're sitting alone in one entire.
Cabin? What do you
Yeah,
call it?
exactly. I hate that because I always feel that now some psycho will come into this and kill me or scream or whatever. Or there's a lot of very drunk people or yeah, it's I usually never take the metro if I can avoid it. But when I do, especially yeah, if it's late and I'm alone, I usually feel very uncomfortable.
And how do you think can we solve this problem? Did you thought about like a solution to this, or just it's just a feeling no matter what we do?
No, I mean it's also a lot about like because first of all they are pretty dirty and they look really old, and of course you can't really do much about that because that's people who are not being mindful about the space. They are like sitting with their feet on the seats and throwing garbage and don't care. So of course I mean that's hard to avoid maybe, but I think it's also the lightning here as well. This really like yellow light that is also more like spotlights or just in
Yeah,
particular places. And yeah, in general, I mean, it doesn't feel. I mean, it's not designed to feel safe. I mean, it's really like it's just white everywhere, and it's not any like. It's just really, you can just, yeah, it's so simply made with just white walls
yeah,
and blue sheets.
yeah.
So I don't know if you would feel safer if there was like other colors. But I mean, yeah, for example, maybe I mean in some places like not in the metro, but I mean in some places they have some like quiet music in the background. You can't really hear it when there's a lot of people, but
Yeah.
when you're alone, you can hear it. And yeah, I mean, I guess there are ways to make it feel safer, even though, of course, the main problem is as long as you're alone, you will, at least for me, I can only speak for myself, as long as I'm alone, and I will always feel a bit unsafe.
Yes, I understand. Do you believe that if there will be some artworks and some extra, let's say, colors or sculpture that will makes you feel a bit more comfortable? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, if there were some type of artworks that made me feel a bit empowered, like a strong woman or man for that matter, but like artwork that made me feel like, yeah, I'm also strong and I can what I just so on. Yeah, and of course, I think that could.
So more motivational
Yeah,
artwork.
exactly. Yeah.
Just make you kick anyone who
Yeah,
tries
exactly.
to.
Like you can do this.
That will be really great, to be honest.
Yeah. Maybe they can have some like show you how to do good karate moves or something.
Exactly. Like how to kick someone in 3 steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Caroline, now me as working as an urban planner, we have a lot of this community engagement and participation, which means that people can be part of the design and be part of creating this story. Because what happened in the last years is just like architects, urban planner, they just think that this will work, and actually it didn't work in the long run. And that's why we see so many problems in the community or in the cities. So do you believe it's really important that you will be part of creating a space and contributing with your ideas?
Yeah, of course. I mean, maybe not necessarily me as a person, but I definitely think it's important that the people who are living in a city and the people who are walking in the streets, using the metro, biking around, that those people are part of contributing to making that place good. Because I mean, it's even though if you're working with building cities and architecture, I mean, it's hard when you come to a new place. You've never been there before, maybe, or you know. So yeah, I think it's really important to bring in the people who will be using it.
And how do you think we should integrate? Let's focus now on the females, on the women. How should we integrate females in this kind of design process, and also how should we listen to them, and which question should we ask if you have something in mind?
Hmm, hard question, but I mean, yeah, I mean it's hard to say because obviously it depends on where in the world or which city you're in. But I mean, I guess there has to be a way to like get in contact with females in that area. For example, I mean, go to schools and ask the students, or look what companies are sitting in that area and ask them if they could, I don't know, send out an email and ask the females who work there if they want to be part of contributing. Or I mean, just stop someone in the street and see. I mean, in Sweden that's hard because people don't like to talk to strangers, but maybe in other countries.
That's a really valuable point, actually.
Yeah.
And what are the challenges that you think cities are facing in order to create a gender equal city?
Yeah, I mean, I think a problem, what I can see in the tech industry, and I can only assume that it could be the same, is that you like if you want to do like if you want gender equality, you have to have like you have to have a gender equality group who is creating whatever you are creating or building. And that is hard in industries where that is dominated by males, because you can't force anyone to go into an industry. You can't force anyone to, now you have to work with us. So I mean, you can't force women to contribute if they don't want to. You have to want them to be there, and that is a long process. I mean, how do we recruit more women, but also how do we make more women study this subject so that they will start to work in this industry or with this specific professions. So I mean, it's a long way to make sure that it's equal. But yeah, I mean, one thing is of course to make sure that more women are studying this subject so that they becoming like, so they are available for the work or that is needed to be done. But then of course you can also in this, I guess you can also, I mean, yeah, ask more women, make sure that when we are building something, do we have people that we, if we can't find people to hire, do at least have people like in this case then women that we can ask, that we can make sure that whenever we're building something, it has been, also approved by females, so that we know that yeah, we have both sides of it.
Like you are imagining a kind of supervisors for a construction
Yeah,
project or a design project,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, of course, try to hire women. But if you can't do, like, if there is, if it ends up with a male-dominated group anyway, then yes, find female advisories.
That's
And
really
make sure they are asked.
that's really interesting idea, Caroline, to be honest. I think we need it as well now. I mean, we always need it, but especially now we need it because everything is possible, and we are more creative and to create different advisory boards and so on. So
Yeah,
good point.
especially, I mean, now with internet, this new thing. No, but I mean, with social media and everything, I mean, it's so easy to get access to people. It's just, I mean, it's just a matter of doing it. Like, okay, we need women living in this particular city. I mean, there are dozens of way of finding a lot of females in that place, and for sure some of them would be interested in being part of, I mean, creating the city they are living in.
Yeah. We need the Me Too mindset, basically.
Exactly.
Well, Caroline, smart city. I know you're a high techie girl, and I would love to hear your point of view. How do you define a smart city?
uh, well, I would say a city that is connected. I mean, where everything is built in a way so that it works together, so that it's not only about looking beautiful but it's also working. For example, that you have, I mean, yeah, that you have smart metro stations that are connected to everything else and so on. So I mean, it's hard to like how to define it, but I would say connected, like everything is connected and makes sense together.
Yeah, so you mean the systems, the different system are connected in one big digital ecosystem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think Stockholm is a smart city?
I think it's getting smarter. I wouldn't say that it's super smart yet, but I know they are working on it a lot. Once again, I actually think that Linköping is the smartest city in Stockholm, in Sweden, and I think also Malmö and Lund is two cities who are also very high on the smart city list in Sweden. But when I was writing my thesis, when I was a student, we were actually thinking about writing about smart cities from an IoT perspective, of course. And then I know that we were in discussion with the government already then, trying to like see where they were then. But then it was, I mean, they were really starting then, so it wasn't really happening much. But yeah, I know there's a lot of things going on, and I'm looking forward to see where it is in a couple of years.
Yes, me too. And you mentioned that it's a connected city. So whose responsibility to connect the different systems? Is it the government, the private corporation? What do you think?
I think it's a mix. I think that the government should have a big responsible, but I also think that, I mean, as you can see a lot when it comes to innovation, when it comes to technology and so on, it is private corporations who leads. And I think that they will have to continue to do that, because the government will always be a step behind. I mean, at least for now. So I think a corporation need to put pressure on the government, and then the government need to act.
And you work in so many different companies and study in different universities. So do you think that there's a willing between companies to connect their systems, or we still have this competition and fight?
I can see more and more the companies want like understanding the importance of working together and connecting things together. Sometimes, of course, there's still um, some fighting going on, but I don't see that so much anymore. I mean, especially not when it comes to new companies, because they understand. They understand how important it is, and they understand that if they work together, they can create something much cooler. And I also think that now, I mean, during Corona times, you can see that even more companies understanding and people understanding that, I mean, if we work together, we can come up with really cool new smart solutions that will make our lives better.
Yeah. And what do you see? Are we going toward a smart city, or how?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to have a smart city, at least in Sweden, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in Sweden, that is really like something that everybody's talking about. Like, we want to have the smartest city. I feel that every time when you're in some type of meeting with anyone in the government or anyone working with IoT or whatever, that's everything they're talking about. So we're definitely going towards smarter cities. And I mean, the only like problem is that technology needs to. I mean, we're not really there yet when it comes to technology. I feel that a lot of times when we talk about different technical solutions, we tend to talk about things that will happen in maybe 5 or 10 years. There are not like developed things yet, but definitely, I mean, there is a lot of cool things happening and a lot of cool projects starting. So in a few years' time, I think we will see a lot of cool changes.
Yeah, good to hear that.
Yeah,
Smart.
yeah,
Well, Caroline, it was so inspiring and so interesting to have this conversation with you. Again, thank you so much for giving your time to the podcast.
yeah. Thank you. It was really cool talking about cities and architecture. I don't do that so often, so it was really fun.
Thank you so much. So, how would you like to summarize what we talked about in three takeaway messages for all the listeners that listen to you?
Okay, good. Good question. Well, for I think I don't think we maybe discussed this so much, but I think one thing that I always feel is important to bring up is the importance of like you have the power to change things yourself. If you're living in a city that you don't feel is adapted for you, or if you're in a situation where that you don't like, or if something bad is happening, you have always the power yourself to change it. And sometimes it can be really difficult, of course, but especially like it comes to like we're talking at the end about who is responsible for making the city smarter. I mean, you are as a person, I mean, you can always do something, and you can like if you have ideas or something you want, like something you see that's like, oh, this should be different. I mean, try to change it yourself, because I think we all have the power in us and the responsibility to be part of creating tomorrow. What else? Yeah, okay. So we talked about it now a little bit in the end, and I also think that's always important to say that. I mean, we can do a lot of cool things with technology, but we also a lot of the times we tend to talk too much about the future of technology instead of talking about where are we right now, like where is technology right now. So when building a smart city, if you are not on the technical side but on the, for example, the architectural side or the building the city side, I mean, try to really understand what is possible with technology today, because sometimes I think that we think that everything is possible, which is not is right now, of course. And okay, I had three, so one more.
Yes, one more
um,
powerful message.
one more powerful message. Okay, yeah, I think that like something that we obviously like we all know it by now, but if we are a diverse group of people and not just different gender, but everything, like diverse groups are usually like better than groups with only one type of person. So if you are a diverse group of people who are representing the society or the country you are building something in, that will most likely be, I mean, a more successful thing than if there's only one type of person in a group. So to make sure that always have a lot of different people around you when you're building something or creating something is really important.
Yeah, that's a really great message as well. If you really aim for a diverse city, so you need to be diverse in the group that's creating the city.
Exactly.
Super powerful. Thank you so much, Caroline. And three hashtags for the episode.
Through hashtags. Okay, I guess hashtag me too, hashtag smart cities, and hashtag city for everyone.
Okay, that's really all of the hashtags are great and the takeaway messages. Now green light. So thank you so much again, Caroline. Hopefully see you again in Stockholm.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Don't forget to follow Instagram and subscribe the YouTube channel for live talks. If you have any great story that makes our city smarter, please contact me. Urbanistica podcast is produced in collaboration with Landskapslaget, a company working with landscape architecture and urban design in Stockholm. I am Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.